Treasurer and Mr. Secretary of State and former congressmen, former senators, current state senators and congress people, not congress people, you're state representatives, and Mr. Chairman of the party, there you are right there. It's an honor to have you here. Honor to have so many friends here. Great to be with you today. I've had fun this week. We had a debate, as you may have noted, on Monday. Most of you had something better to do, but a few of you turned into the TV and watched the debate. It was kind of a fun experience. You never know what's going to happen in those things. You have some idea what the questions might be, and so you prepare for the kind of attack you expect might come. But typically, there are some surprises as well, and this was a good experience for me. I enjoyed it, and we have another one on Sunday, and then one a week later. I don't mean Sunday, Monday, and then another one, I think about a week or week and a half later. So you're gonna be calling your stations and saying, could you please go back to the regularly scheduled programming, please? The number of Republican debates just doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm enjoying the experience. Because I've got family here, and because I'm in the Rockies, and with a number of friends, I thought I might just tell a couple of family experiences. I was with my grandkids a couple of weeks ago. Not all of them. We have 16. But I was with a number of them, and I said to Ann, do you think we're going to do with our grandkids what my dad and my mom did with their grandkids? And Doug knows what I'm referring to. Doug is my nephew, Doug Robinson, as you probably know. What would that have been, Doug?
They took us on a trip throughout the West when we were 12, 13 years old, and we spent 2 weeks with them. Is that it?
Yeah. Most of us got 30 days of nonstop driving across the country with my mom and dad. My sons complained that my mother somehow thought that a cooler kept food fresh forever, and she had packed enough egg salad sandwiches to last for 30 days. My sons will not eat egg salad sandwiches to this day. But I knew what my dad was doing. One, he wanted our kids to fall in love with America and to see our mountains and our canyons and the lakes and streams and so forth, and see the extraordinary beauty of the land we live in. But I also knew that my dad was teaching them about the spirit of the country. Because I've been on this trip myself when I was a boy. He and Mom put us in the car. We didn't have the Ford van back then. Put us in the car and drove from national park to national park. And in between the parks, by the way, Mom would read to us from a book. You may have seen it. It was written in the 1960s, called Men to Match My Mountains. It was written by Irving Stone, a historian, 1960s, a couple of nodding heads. In that book, it describes the settling of the West. California, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona. And in telling these stories, you find the men and the women that were so extraordinary in building this land and this part of the country. Now, I was telling that experience, by the way, a couple of weeks ago at the home of someone named Bill Koch, who I understand is involved in oil and coal and so forth in this region of the country. I was at his home, and he stood up afterwards, and he said, Mitt, do you know where the title of that book came from? I said, no. He said, it came from a poem. Would you like me to recite it? This was in front of a room full of people. I said, sure. He learned this in his youth. I don't know that there's anything I can remember from my youth that I could recite. But he stood up and he recited the poem, which I've since learned. It's only 4 lines. Even I can do that. And the poem said this. It said, bring me men to match my mountains. Bring me men to match my plains. Men with empires in their purpose and new eras in their brains. And I thought about that poem. I hadn't heard it before. But men and women with empires in their purpose and new eras in their brains. Not empires of conquering other nations, but empires of discovery and pioneering and thought and new eras, that we of this country would change the world by virtue of the discoveries and the philosophies and the experiments that would occur here. This is what has made us who we are, in my view. The fact that men and women of capacity and character have settled in this country and have brought to it their empire, their purposes of empire, and their new eras in their brains. I love this country and what it's become. And what frightens me, as the general talked about the challenges we face, is that we have a president today and people who associate with him who have made, in my view, characteristic mistakes of people who don't understand what makes America the nation that we are. It is free people choosing our own path in life that has allowed us to surpass Europe and the more populous nations of Asia, to become the most powerful land on earth. It is, if you will, people with empires and their purpose and new eras in their brains. It is not government. It is not government telling us how to live our life, or where we should make our investments, or how to take our money and they'll spend it for us. It is instead free people. And so President Obama came in, and only knowing government, he's never worked in the private sector. He's never led anything in his life, never been a leader. He took the reins of the largest enterprise in the world and did what he knew, which is to grow government and have government make things better. Except it didn't work, because government doesn't make things better. If government intrudes in the workings of the economy and in the lives of our citizens, then our economy will suffer. And what happened, and you can just go down almost every step he took, it had the exact opposite effect of what you might have hoped for. He did the one thing that business can't deal with. Entrepreneurs, big and small, can deal with bad news. But one thing they can't deal with is uncertainty. Uncertainty makes it very difficult to get a loan from a bank if you can't tell them what the future might be, or to get investors to invest in your enterprise. And every measure that the president pursued created greater uncertainty. Dodd-Frank, the financial regulatory bill. If you're in the financial services sector, and a few of you are, you pull back because you don't know what's coming in regulation. Obamacare. How about having the federal government take over 1/5 of the economy, almost 1/5 of the economy, with health care? If you're in the healthcare sector, making devices or instruments or pharmaceuticals, you pull back. Card check. How about this idea of forcing unions into enterprises where the employees don't want them? If you're an employer or thinking of starting a business that's people intensive, you pull back. And it goes on with cap and trade and so forth. The president created the one thing the enterprises of America can't deal with, uncertainty. And so they pulled back. And it's taken this economy so much longer to reboot as a result of those mistakes. And sometimes I wonder, how is it that he made such extraordinary errors in judgment? And I've joked here before, drawing on the old Ronald Reagan line. And it's this, Ronald Reagan said, it's not that liberals are ignorant, it's just that what they know is wrong. And what he did, what he knew was wrong. He executed the policies which liberals have pursued for years, which is growing the government. His stimulus, by the way, added 135,000 new federal workers on top of the 2.2 million we already had, thinking that would somehow make things better. It made things worse. The answer is not to grow government, it's to shrink government, reduce the amount of pay that's being taken from our entrepreneurs and inventors and investors, and let them get the economy going. And so he made that mistake. I also think that he takes his inspiration politically, not just from the faculty lounge at the Harvard Club, but also at the feet of, if you will, the social democrats of Europe. And I don't think Europe is working in Europe, let alone here. I take my inspiration from America. I believe we got it right and they got it wrong. I believe that when the founders crafted this country, their brilliance was first in seeing that we should change the relationship between citizen and state. The state would be the servant and the citizen would be the sovereign. But they also saw a change in relationship between how we would live our lives and the way it had been done before. They said not only would we have the freedom to choose who would represent us, we would have the freedom to choose our course in life. We could do whatever we wanted. Circumstance of birth would not permanently limit our capacity. And so every entrepreneur, every innovator, every freedom lover in the world wanted to come here. And in large measure they did. It's what made us who we are. These freedoms, political freedom, economic freedom, personal freedoms, it drew in the people that drove this economy past those nations from which we had sprung. I love free enterprise and capitalism. A few of you are business people here. I don't think the president likes you very much. I'm kind of kidding, but I love you. I mean, I like what you do. I recognize that everything we have to spend, those of us who are lucky enough to get elected, and I'm currently not elected, but those of us who are elected, what we spend for defending ourselves in our military, caring for our veterans, building schools, teaching kids, caring for our seniors, those dollars that we spend only have value if they represent a good or service that has been produced by the private sector. I like what you do. What you're doing is good for America and good for our people and moral and just. I appreciate the hard work of the American worker and entrepreneurs and innovators that allow us to have the capacity to defend ourselves and care for those that we love and that are in need. I love the Constitution, by the way. All the amendments. I'm not picky. I like them all. One of the favorites of anyone who is in state government is the 10th Amendment, which says roughly this. It says, those powers not specifically granted to the federal government in the Constitution are to be reserved by the states and the citizens. I love the fact that we have freedom as individuals, but that we have states which are in some ways able to provide for us in the places that confront us most directly. Our schools, our health care, caring for the poor. That's done at the state level. And when the federal government grabs that power from us, it violates the principles of the Constitution, in my view. By the way, I love the fact that the brilliance of the founders to come up with this idea of states. They didn't call them departments, by the way, or provinces, or sectors, like other nations. Ours are states. They have a degree of sovereignty, which is different than other nations. And as a result, we do learn from one another, and we compete. I've told a few of you here my favorite competition between states experience, which is becoming elected governor of Massachusetts and having Arnold Schwarzenegger come to my state and try and poach jobs from his fellow Republican governor. I was offended. He put billboards up in Massachusetts with him in a t-shirt saying, come to California. So I put billboards up in California with me in a t-shirt, flexing my muscles, and it said, smaller muscles but much lower taxes, come to Massachusetts. So you can compete. I love the greatness of the country, by the way. It just, it pained me to watch the president in his first months in office go around the world and apologize for America, thinking somehow that he would ingratiate himself to those nations around the world that don't like us by apologizing and exuding weakness. There is no reason to apologize for the greatest nation in the history of the earth that has sacrificed more than any other nation for others to bring them freedom and prosperity. I will never apologize for the United States of America. I love this country. I love the things we represent. I recognize that right now we're facing extraordinary challenges. And a lot of people wonder whether we're going to get out of these messes. And you know what they are. $14.5 trillion of debt. And then another number we don't talk about very much. The USA Today calculated it at $62 trillion of promises made by government that have not been funded. Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security promises. $62 trillion. By the way, that works out to $532,000 per household. And if you're my age or older, you won't be paying any of that. Your kids will. And so we pass on a legacy to the households of the future, $532,000 per household and counting. It's simply inexcusable. And then go on with other challenges. Jihadists who are trying to kill us. Russia resurgent. China becoming a global power. Iran becoming nuclear. We face some real challenges. But we tend to rise to the occasion as a people. I think in part because of that spirit I described with my little story of the poem. We're a patriotic people. We're the only people on earth who place our hand over our heart during the playing of the national anthem. It was FDR that asked us to do that in honor of our fighting men and women who were lost in war overseas during the Second World War. We're a patriotic people. I'm convinced that given the patriotism of the American people and that spirit of enterprise and a willingness to step forward, that if we're led by leaders who will tell us the truth and live with integrity and who actually know how to lead and where to lead us, that America will rise to the occasion, and we will remain the great nation we have always been, and we will remain the hope of the earth. And I intend to be one of those leaders with your help. Thank you so much. Great to be with you today.